Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stephen King Cast, one man's musings on the works of Stephen King. Each week, I will review one entry in the bibliography of Stephen King in the chronological order of publication. And today, what I'm going to do, I am checking out and reviewing something that completely passed me by back in 2023, that I kind of just dismissed unnecessarily and unfairly. So I recently asked my wife, I said, hey, do you want to check this out? I'm trying to, clean up some of my mistakes over on the Stephen King Cast. She said, sure, because she's always down for a fun time with horror movies and horror TV shows. And we decided to check out The Boogeyman from 2003. So today we're going to be talking about The Boogeyman. I'm very excited to discuss this. There's a lot to pull out from this, and I just wanted to say before I get to The Boogeyman, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Stephen King Cast, one man's musings on the works of Stephen King. For those of you who are first-time listeners, welcome aboard. I'm going to take some time to explain how to best listen to the Stephen King Cast. For long-time listeners, thank you as always for tuning in and showing up and showing that support to this little podcast that could. So for new listeners, this was designed to be a chronological exploration of Stephen King's published works and designed to review from Carrie all the way through Stephen King's latest publication. I started it back in 2014. And just recently, I decided to revamp the podcast. So I've gone in, I've done some re-recordings and some re-edits of the episodes. I've George Lucased some of it, and I have reordered everything so that truly is in the chronological order of publication. So that has been good to do because that's something that has been weighing on me over the years. So the podcast feed is now completely reordered. I'm still doing some cleanup on that. But if you are looking for a particular episode and you can't find it, chances are I have pulled it out of rotation from right now because I need to re-record some elements of it. So just let me know and I'll be able to clarify that and maybe get it to you if that's what you're looking for. So that is the Stephen King Cast. It's one man's musings on the works of Stephen King. You can also find more aspects of this podcast over on Patreon. There's currently two tiers. One tier is Constant Reader. So Constant Reader is great for the longtime listeners who have listened to everything and they've hit that point where you're listening to this episode, you're done with this episode, but you want more. Well, the good news is you have early access to upcoming Stephen King Cast episodes over on the Constant Readers tier of Patreon. Also included in that tier is anytime there's big Stephen King news or anything worth discussing, I will be able to do some news updates and some analysis of that news. So for instance, when Mike Flanagan announced that he was going to be directing and writing The Mist, I recorded an episode kind of breaking that down around the question of why when we have Frank Darabont's movie of The Mist. So I'm able to touch upon Frank Darabont. I'm able to touch upon Mike Flanagan's track record. I discussed the fact that these are the two guys that are known for being able to deliver Stephen King content so authentically. And it just kind of sounds like Mike Flanagan is stepping onto Frank Darabont's corner here. So I discussed that over on the Constant Readers feed on Patreon. Then over in the Deadlights, by the time you're listening to this, maybe the Deadlights tiered name has changed to something else because it doesn't quite fit what that tier is, which is everything but Stephen King for the most part. So this, I'm so grateful for this podcast because it has allowed me to streamline all of my thoughts and focus on to Stephen King throughout the years. But I have a lot of other thoughts on a lot of other properties and a lot of other pop cultural properties out there. So I'm able to focus a lot of my energies on everything other than Stephen King over there. So if you want my thoughts on Game of Thrones and A Night of Seven Kingdoms, that's over there. There is a deep dive into Batman, into Godzilla, as I review Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, the movie review of Primate. So anytime there is something pop cultural zeitgeisty that is within my wheelhouse, I'll be able to record an episode or episodes over there. And once if I ever review, just sit down and watch a horror movie, and I have some time on my hands, well, that review is going to go up on the Constant Reader. I'm sorry, not the Constant Reader, the Deadlights tier over on Patreon. So there's a lot of exciting stuff that's happening over in the world of the Stephen King cast, and I'm just trying to get everyone to just at least check out the Patreon page and let me know what you think. As always, you can write into StephenKingcast@yahoo.com. I have loved over the years getting listener emails, so please don't stop now. Write into StephenKingcast@yahoo.com. You can check out StephenKingcast.com, which is the one-stop shop for all things Stephen King cast. It gives you direct access to the episodes. There's the link to the Patreon page. There's a blog there. There's an easy way to contact me, and then there's a collections page, which I am in the midst of curating collections for everyone, so you don't have to go hunting and pecking and searching for episodes related to certain themes or Stephen King geographies or connective tissue between works. So, for instance, everything related to dairy is collected into one collection. Everything related to all the Stephen King short stories, from Night Shift to Skeleton Crew, Nightmares and Dreamscapes, Everything's Eventual, Just After Sunset, and Bizarre of Bad Dreams. It's all right there. It's all there for you, as well as all of the adapted works from there. Everything pertaining to Midworld and the Dark Tower series. And not only do you get all of the Dark Tower series reviews, but you also get Talisman, you get Black House, you get Eyes of the Dragon, Insomnia, Salem's Lot, The Stand. So it's all there for you collected. So like I said, you don't have to go hunting and pecking. So I will be doing the same thing for all of the movie adaptations of Stephen King, the top 10 lists that I have done, everything related to Castle Rock. I'll do the novellas. So if you just kind of want to just stick with a particular theme for a while, you can head on over to StephenKingcast.com and just go to collections. Also at Stephen King Cast, if you go to playlists, playlists are the music that is either referenced in a particular Stephen King novel, or featured within an adaptation of a Stephen King novel, or are related to the content of that particular novel. And there's one playlist per each of Stephen King's novels. So you can find the Carrie playlist and the Shining playlist and the Salem's Lot playlist, and also included in those playlists are the reviews of those episodes as well. So that's been fun to put together. So there's a lot of good stuff revolving around Stephen King Cast. So head on over to StephenKingcast.com, leave a review on any of the podcast platforms that you use to listen to the Stephen King Cast. Shoot me an email, either by going to the Stephen King Cast by clicking on Contact Me, or just shoot me an email over at StephenKingcast@yahoo.com. Check out the Patreon page. That'd be greatly appreciated. And just thank you, everyone, for enjoying the Stephen King Cast throughout the years. So, with all that said, let's get right into it. Let's talk about the Boogeyman. So many years ago, back in 2014, when I sat down to do the podcast for the first time, and I got to Night Shift and I started reviewing the Boogeyman short story, I was very dismissive of it. And everyone wrote in, they're like, you don't get it. You're not getting the point. And so I had to eat a lot of crow with that. And maybe that is one of the reasons why I was so... maybe dismissive and just not open to an adaptation of the Boogeyman. And also a decade prior, there was a non-related Stephen King movie called The Boogeyman that kind of just is lurking in my brain that maybe I was making some connotations to. So I wasn't interested in the Boogeyman. With that being said, I love the concept of the Boogeyman. The Boogeyman myth is a universal fear, that quality of the unknown lurking in the darkness, in the darkest recesses of of a room in what is supposed to be our safest place, as a primal fear, that dates back to the origins of us living in caves and finding this place of safety within this cave, and then outside of the cave, darkness lurks. And as we have been able to control the environment to a certain degree and create safe spaces for ourselves, that idea, that primal fear that something is lurking right outside of you within the darkness, and having that darkness encroach upon our safe spaces it's a universal fear. It is rooted in our childhoods, I was always cognizant of my closet door when I was growing up. I always, had these images of something bursting out of there. And then as a parent, every night when my daughter was younger, I would have to do monster checks in her room. I would check under the bed. I would check in the corners. I would check in her closet. We had monster spray, which we would spray around the room, to keep the monsters at bay. So it's I got to see it as a parent. And my kid, who, is not a very frightened child, by any means, who has always been able to watch a little bit of stuff on the spookier side. I wonder where she gets it from. No, but I would see that. I would see that that kind of take over her in the nighttime, even though she would have her nightlight, even though, the bedroom door would be open, and, we don't have the world's biggest house. So she was never, truly alone. And, we'd be downstairs and she'd be able to hear us just kind of pitter pattering around. I was able to, experience that as a parent, that universal fear that children have when it comes to the boogeyman. And when I think of the boogeyman, not only do I think of just that shared idea of maybe a hand reaching out from the closet, from inside the closet door, I also think of Ghostbusters, and I think I talked about this in my night shift review. But Ghostbusters did a wonderful job at the real Ghostbusters, the cartoon, did a great job at capturing this idea of the boogeyman, and actually tied it to the origin story of Egon as to why he got into this ghost busting in the first place. Because as a child, he was tormented by the boogeyman, and it's such a distinct, for those of you who know, it's such a distinct design of the boogeyman, and he's horrifying, and that has always stuck with me as well. So, once I decided I was gonna, check out, the boogeyman, I started thinking about it, and I got more excited. And then I realized, once I actually sat down and paid attention to the talent behind it, that's when I realized I shouldn't have slept on this. Because first of all, it's directed by Rob Savage. Now, Rob Savage is someone that I am just grateful for, because he created a movie at the height of the pandemic back in 2000 called The Host, which is not to be confused with the Korean film, The Host, the monster movie. This was the perfect horror movie for the time, and it was an effective not found footage movie, but it was an effective, I don't know what the terminology, just a Zoom movie. And for all of us at the time to be existing in quarantine, in lockdown, communicating to each other over Zoom, having Zoom parties with our friends, to have a movie be able to capture that. This is a movie where friends host a seance over Zoom. And despite them being in different locations, they are able to conjure something, and we see what happens when this thing that they conjure starts going around to each one. And there's some really, really effective thrills and scares that take place. It's a really, really well done horror movie that happens to be able to utilize and capture being on Zoom very authentically. And so for all of us who were just, drowning in Zoom meetings and Zoom calls and communication with Zoom. It was great to see a horror movie capture that and capture where we were at that time. So I give all of the credit in the world to Rob Savage for giving us that movie, and I was very interested to see what he was able to do outside of that premise, outside of that conceit, and I'll definitely talk a little bit more about that. So that's the talent behind the screen. The talent on the screen also is very strong. We got Chris Messina, who is always reliable in whatever he brings. He was hilarious in the Mindy Project, but he can modulate his performances to be able to play a little bit more tough guy. But what I like about him is that there is always this balance of he has a strength, but he also has a great warmth. And there is always, whenever he is on screen, I always want to see what he's doing. So I'm always interested when Chris Messina is involved in a project. So he's in it. Sophie Thatcher is in it. Sophie Thatcher, who is becoming one of our modern Scream Queens, who hit the scene with Yellowjackets, a show whose first season I thoroughly enjoyed, but had to tap out about midway through the second season because I just felt that it was spinning its wheels. But she was one of the standout performances of Yellowjackets, the story of a team of girl soccer players who crash land in some mysterious woods in the 90s, and cannibalism is teased, and then the parallel story to them in present day having to live with the horrors of what they inflicted upon each other in those woods, with some supernatural elements sprinkled throughout. I don't think it's a very consistent show. I don't think that's a show that is very in control of its own narrative, but that first season is so thrilling. She also was the star, along with Jack Quaid, in Companion, which I believe came out in like January 25, which, oh my God, what a great movie that is. I don't want to spoil it for you, but I would just point you in the direction of Companion. That was a wonderful, wonderful movie. My wife and I really, really enjoyed it. And then also last year, Heretic came out with Hugh Grant. Oh my God, which the dialogue and the conversations and the themes and the ideas that are examined within this movie around the dangers and the powers of religion and the belief in religion and the patterns and the cribbing and ideas being just cannibalized and absorbed into larger ideas. We were awestruck. My wife and I were cackling at times during this movie with how good the dialogue was, and the arguments were, and Hugh Grant is just amazing in this movie. So Sophie Thatcher has a really strong track record with being able to pick some really good horror movies to star in. So she's definitely someone to keep your eye on. And then we have Dave Dastmalchian, who you'll recognize him. He is one of our more famous character actors. And if you have not seen Late Night with the Devil, please do, because that kind of breaks him out of the haunted, twitchy, nervous, shady guy that he tends to play, and puts him in the role of the main character, a talk show host in the 1970s who, during a Halloween episode, brings someone in to perform a live exorcism. Spoiler alert, it does not go well, but it is a fun ride to immerse ourselves in this 1970s talk show host setting, and he does a great job with it. So once I realized the talent that was assembled behind and in front of the camera, I got way more excited about being able to view the Boogeyman. So let me get into it. I'm going to read the Wikipedia summary so I have a basis upon which I can build my analysis. Therapist Will Harper is struggling to overcome the death of his wife, who died suddenly in a car crash. His daughters, Sadie and Sawyer, are likewise struggling to deal with their mother's death. One day, a disturbed man named Lester Billings visits Will's office. Lester explains that his 3 children, including his youngest daughter Annie, have died, all killed by an evil entity that latched onto his family. A disbelieving Will goes to call the police. Lester slips away and Sadie finds his body hanging in her mother's art closet. Soon afterwards, Sadie notices a strange mold beginning to form around the house, while Sawyer glimpses a sinister creature under her bed. The creature continues to terrorize Sawyer, while Sadie suspects the phenomenon is related to Lester's suicide. She visits the Billings' rundown house. Inside, she discovers Rita, the now unhinged wife of Lester. Rita identifies the creature as the Boogeyman, the culprit behind her children's death. The creature feeds off fear and grief and can mimic voices. The only way to ward it off is by light. Feeling unsafe around Rita, Sadie flees. During a sleepover with a group of girls from her school, Sadie encounters the Boogeyman and Sawyer is attacked shortly thereafter, ending up hospitalized. Sadie is contacted by Rita, who needs her help to kill the Boogeyman. When Sadie arrives, Rita attacks her, planning to use her as bait for her trap. The Boogeyman survives the trap and kills Rita. Sadie escapes and realizes that her family has returned home. I'm sorry, everyone. My furry co-host is obsessed with coming and going from the house, and she never stays in one place very often. And this click-clacking that you are hearing is her letting me know that she wants to go outside. And I'm sure that at some point you're going to hear some barking, letting me know that she wants back in, and the perpetual cycle repeats itself. Okay, so at home, she finds Sawyer hiding. The creature has taken Will into the basement. In the basement, the sisters find the creature feeding off Will. They rescue their father and a chase ensues through the basement. After a struggle, Sadie sets the creature on fire, avenging the Billings family, and the family escapes the burning house. Sometime later, the family have a group session with their therapist, Dr. Weller. As they leave, Sadie is called back by Dr. Weller, only to discover she is not there and the closet door is open, suggesting that the creature has returned. Dr. Weller appears and asks why Sadie is there. Suspicious. Sadie shuts the closet door. So, review. It starts appropriately enough with a young girl waking up in her crib. Light plays across the room from a mobile as the closet door opens. The camera in this scene is in constant motion, revolving around the room with lights. The girl is screaming as something emerges from the closet. The closet we see, the closest we see to whatever it is that is emerging is the dark shadow moving against the wall closer and closer to the crib as a voice, this is haunting, insists that it's the girl's father. The girl's screams are silenced as a splash of blood sprays against a framed photograph of a happy family. Now, I did not expect this beginning. Despite deaths being prevalent in horror movies, the death of children is something that is used sparingly. And this actually makes a lot of sense. This needs to happen in this movie because the Boogeyman is the universal fear, for the most part, of the child. So to frame this through the child's perspective and have it be such a young child, already the stakes are being established very clearly as to what type of movie this is, what the threat level of this movie is, and what type of horror this is. This is an incredibly effective scene with a lot of talent on display. The way that the camera, like I said, is in constant motion, like the lights themselves, it's revolving around the room, and you, as the camera is moving, you see the shadow getting closer. There's this disorientation from the voice saying it's the father. It is very upsetting, very disturbing, very disorienting, very effective, mood drenched, and also just in its own way with the camera and the lighting. It's very beautiful. This is a well done scene. It's a great opening, and it's got me hook, line, and sinker. From there, we meet our main characters: Sadie, a painter, and Sawyer, a young girl who is cautious of her closet door. And we meet their father, Will. psychiatrist, as stated, played by always dependable Chris Messina. Despite the recent loss of their mother, the family is portrayed as happy as happy as a family can be, considering their circumstances. The joke about pulling out Sadie's tooth, it's just it's a fun little bit of texture that makes the family unit seem real. And a scene like this doesn't need to be included, but its inclusion allows us to see this family. And I have criticized this before in the Pet Sematary remake. I keep just crapping on that movie throughout the years. I just keep taking unnecessary pot shots at it. But it stood out to me that in that movie, I just did not feel as though the filmmakers provided that lived-in quality of a family, which you need to do in order to really establish the loss and the drive to bring a family member back from the dead. But here, in this movie, Rob Savage, I think, makes some smart decision here to show this family dealing with this shared loss, but in their own ways. And it's not just one thing. It's not that the mother has died and now the family is in complete disarray. They're going about their lives and they're trying their best, but they're not communicating with each other the way that they could be. But it doesn't mean that the bonds aren't there. It doesn't mean that the love isn't there. It doesn't mean that the dad is being neglectful. And I think that that's important, that it's a nuanced examination. And with a scene like this in the car where they're joking about Sadie's tooth, it shows the family that there's hope that they're going to get through this tragedy. And I like that despite the death of a parent that is looming over this story and thematically plays the role of the engine for this movie, it shows that we contain multitudes, to borrow a phrase from another Stephen King story. But that's I like this choice because it makes it feel more real. And I like being able to spend time with characters who I like rather than it would be different. I just felt if everyone was shut down and shut away from each other. It's Sadie's first day back at school since the death of her mother, and she moves through the hallways trying to disappear, an impossible task since all eyes are on her. It's high school. It's the aftermath of a high school girl's dead mother. It's inevitable that we're going to get a scene about bullying this dead mother, which is exactly what happens, and it's hard to watch, even though you know it's going to happen. Back at home, a dark silhouette through the screen door stares at Will, who reveals himself to be Lester, played again, as always, by the reliable Dave Dastmalchian, a nervous, haunted soul who insists that Will see him. Lester explains that his children have all died, and he gives a wonderful performance here, full of grief and fear, while telling the story of something coming after his children. And then he says something that it isn't really brought up again, but is such, to me, an important part of this story, from a parent's perspective, which is the thing that comes after your kids when you're not paying attention. If you haven't seen Adolescence on Netflix, it's a 4-part series. It's so powerful. It's impactful. It got a lot of acclaim last year. Every episode is one long continuous shot. But at the heart of the story, it's exactly this: the thing that comes after your kids when you're not paying attention. And that he drops this line. It lingers, and for me, a parent, it's something that really grew as I watched this. Because I can see how an entity that lives on fear and grief and trauma can take advantage of this concept. The thing that comes after your kids when you're not paying attention. It's every parent's nightmare. And Dastmalchian plays this scene perfectly. You can't tell if he's guilty crazy victim. So he's able to just vacillate between these various modalities. And as a viewer, you're not quite sure how to peg him as a character. And neither is Will. And Will tries to remain in control as possible, being assuring to him, while understandably unnerved by this haunted, twitchy, nervous, possibly guilty man who is here talking about the death of children in his home that he shares with his children. So while Will makes a phone call to the authorities, Sadie arrives at the absolute worst time as Lester starts to make his way through the house. Sadie's space is violated. Her painter's studio is in shambles. The second instance in the span of an hour where the touchstone to her mother has been violated. And your heart breaks for her. And it's not over the top. And it's just understood. Rob Savage trusts us as the audience to see how it's not just a violation of her personal space, but that relationship that she has with her mother. There's a haunting noise coming from within the closet. Sadie, brave, enters with I'm sorry, is it... Which one's Sadie and which one? Am I saying Sadie and Sawyer? Am I interchanging them? I don't mean to. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sophie Thatcher is Sadie. That's what's throwing me off. Okay. Okay. So no, we're right. I'm good. I apologize. I'm sorry. Okay, so she enters with a razor, and we get our jump scare when Chris Messina bursts in. An ominous stage direction. This is really well done. A grieving father had just confessed to Will the deaths of his children by something in the closet. And in the very next sequence, a father enters a closet to reach his daughter. Really well done. In the closet, we see the hanging body of Lester, and as if this girl hasn't gone through enough. That night, Will tucks in Sawyer for bed. And after what the family had endured that afternoon, there's no way that this kid's going to sleep in her own bed, no matter how many lights are strung up throughout her room, including the instantly iconic moon globe light that she cuddles with. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful image. We could have had your typical nightlight. We could have had like a little what were those? What were they called back in the 80s and 90s? They were stuffed animals that glowed. So they were both like a stuffy and a nightlight. What was the name of them? Anyway, you could have had that, but no, this is its own thing. It's just a moon globe glow light. And it's going to be used for great effect in this movie. And as I said, in true dad fashion, he conducts a monster check throughout the room, under the bed, and especially in the closet. And again, the way that he plays it, it's very realistic. It's part of their routine. And he's, assuring his daughter while not taking it completely seriously. He's doing it as a dad, and I just thought it was very, very believable. Meanwhile, in the bedroom, Sadie is staring at her phone, specifically the final text messages sent to her mother, which was, "Where are you?" Heartbreaking. Even more heartbreaking is Sadie's attempt to talk to her father about her feelings, who can't hear it. And this is so hard because in this moment, you just want the two of them to talk and to hug and to be present with one another. But he is putting up a barrier, a wall, and he's separating these two versions of himself, the father and the therapist. And in this moment, he's confusing these two. And when she needs her father, he can't be there for her and tries to pawn her off to her own therapist. And you see where he's coming from because he is still working through his own grief, and he's set her up with a mechanism that he can understand, that she can work her way through, which is therapy. The therapist setting her up with a therapist makes perfect sense, but that can't be the end all be all. And in this moment, this girl needs her dad, and he just can't be there for her in this moment because he can't open himself up to that kind of pain. It is heartbreaking, and it's understandable, and it's real, and it's sad. Shortly after, in Sawyer's room, the closet door bursts open, and there's an awesome camera shot of flipping upside down as Sawyer looks underneath the bed. She uses the globe light to roll under the bed where, jump scare alert, something lurks. Again, I give all the credit to the world for Rob Savage, who's doing really cool things with this camera. We get a little blending of Tooth Fairy and Boogeyman iconography as Sawyer, who comes to Sadie for comfort after the bedroom scare, lets her older sister remove her loose tooth with a string in the bedroom door. After they fall asleep, we hear strange, warbling, unknowable noises from behind the closet door. Crying? Laughing? Mumbling? It's a strange audio, and the indiscernible nature makes it that much scarier. An unseen force pulls the tooth through the doorframe. The next morning, in their therapist's office, the doctor treats Sawyer with a truly horrifying form of therapy involving a red strobe light that is terrible counseling, but wonderful for a horror movie. I love a strobe light effect, and here it doesn't disappoint. That night, Sadie goes to her father's office to find more about the man who hanged himself in her closet. She listens to the recording of the sessions while Sawyer goes in search of her sister, hearing strange noises in the dark. Sadie, undeterred in her efforts to get to the bottom of what's affecting her family and to determine what happened to the man who hanged himself in her closet, she goes to Lester's house, which is in complete disarray, whose walls are growing black, moldy vines. She follows the trail of vines upstairs, where candles line the hallway floors. And Sadie meets with Lester's wife, who warns her of the boogeyman. She explains that it latches on to the hurt and the vulnerable, and she believes that in telling his story to Will, it passed itself on to the new family, still haunted by the grief of losing their mother. That night, Sadie confronts Will after he starts clearing out her mother's stuff. She yells at him for barely speaking to him, and his response is so logical, but without warmth. He's not cold. He's just there. Again, it's moments like this that make the movie worth watching. It's a moment where Rob Savage gives Chris Messina and Sophie Thatcher a chance to make something. It's brief, it's not revolutionary, but it's raw, and it's honest, and it's sad. So again, in taking another, Pet Sematary is taking another stray. So I criticize that movie for not providing the movie with texture, with believable moments within the family to make it feel lived in and real. And this movie does the opposite. At the dinner table, Will bribes Sawyer with the PlayStation and screen time just to give Sadie a night with her friends. They joke about farting, and Will gives a Jungle Book joke. You get a sense of this family and their dynamic, of what it can be if they're able to get through to this. And that's important. In a movie about loss and the family unit, you have to make it feel real. And despite the horrors of a literal boogeyman coming for the children, the true horror is teenagers. This group of girls, led by the mean blonde girl, talks shit under her breath, belittles her tragedy, and locks her in the closet where Lester had hanged himself? Oh my God. As Will goes to comfort Sadie, we get a really clever sequence with Sawyer, where she spots the unblinking pinprick eyes of the boogeyman in the recesses of the darkened living room. She uses the bow and arrow energy blasts of the video game to make light burst flashes to drive the thing away. I've never seen that done before. This is such a cool movie. It's very inventive. The creature appears above the TV in a haunting moment. Savage doesn't overdo it. We don't see much of it. It leaps, but it's quick, and the terror comes from not what you see, but from what you don't see. Whatever it is, it knocks Sawyer off the couch and off camera. The camera keeps the shot on the overturned couch, but something is swinging across the ceiling. Sawyer's legs? You can't quite make it out, but you do make out the body of Sawyer thrown into the TV by the horrified reaction of her family rushing down the stairs in slow motion. At the hospital, Will and Sadie have another painful conversation. Again, it's not overly dramatic, and it's real. It's not an argument. It's just an inability to connect. She tries telling him about the monster in the closet, but him being a doctor, a man of reason, he smelled the weed on her and asks her about it. Not being able to turn to her father, she turns to Mrs. Billings and heads back to the Billings house where she's unknowingly used as bait to lure the boogeyman out of the darkness. Mrs. Billings' plan seems to work, and after it hits a tripwire, it's caught in the crossfire, and she does the smart move of a person who knows they're in a horror movie. She doesn't trust that it's dead, and she fires off a few rounds from the shotgun into which she thinks is its dead body. But of course, it's not the end of the movie. It's not dead, and so it does away with Mrs. Billings and goes back to Sadie's house, pulling Will into the darkness. Sadie and Sawyer head to the most primal place of darkness in the house to fight the creature, the basement. And it's a perfect setting for this ending. Basements are scary. And in a movie where the villain, the monster, is the creature that makes the house, which is supposed to be your safest place, the most unsafe place in the world, by setting it in the most primal, cavernous space within the house, the basement. It's the perfect place to end it. The only other place that you could have ended it was inside the closet, if the closet became like a supernatural space. Those are the only two places I think that or a bedroom, I guess. But for what this is, and to have this be a creature of myth from the most primordial aspects of ourselves, the thing that lurks in the darkness, to have this confrontation, this conflict reach its conclusion in the most primal aspect of our home. Yep, works for me. And the family reunites to face their trauma, including the presence of their mother, and they ultimately burn the boogeyman alive. Its tendrils snaking through the house turn the home into an inferno. But as the family is gathered together, but the family is together now, and they have been saved, ready to start fresh. In the end, the family begins to heal as Will is open to being emotionally honest with his girls during a therapy session, and they're now going to be able to heal together. It's a great ending, with Sadie thinking that there's something in the doctor's closet. She creeps towards it and ends the movie the only way it can, by closing the door. Perfect. Smash cut to black. Elvis is singing Burning Love. Love it. Loved this movie. I loved this experience. Like I said at the beginning, I dismissed it when it first came out. I didn't pay it any attention, didn't pay it any mind. I don't really think that there was much dialogue about this movie when it did come out. And shame on all of us for sleeping on it, because this is a really well done horror movie and a really strong Stephen King adaptation. And I really enjoyed myself watching this movie. And what I liked most about it, it's performance based. It doesn't focus on the special effects or the creature design. It is all about tone, and it's all about performance first, with all of the talent that I have already discussed. It's a great showcase for these actors. This isn't as heavy as Hereditary or dramatic as Midsommar, or something that truly is so steeped and soaked in tragedy that's hard to watch. It's not to that level, but it is still a movie about grief within the family unit, and it allows the actors to be able to feel lived in and real. There is a great use of light throughout this movie, from the red strobe light to the moonlight, and the way that it rolls down the hallway and under the bed and illuminates Sawyer. The eyes shining in the recesses of the black, the glow of the television, the flashes from the video game, the blinking lights wrapped around Sawyer at the end as she made her way through the basement. The use of light in this movie is exquisite and varied, and really makes it more than just a monster coming out of the closet. The characters themselves, like I said, this is a performance-based movie. The characters, Sadie is strong, but she's wounded. And Sophie Thatcher, like I said, is one of our modern scream queens, and a reason for it. I like this blend that she gives of this wounded performance. She's hurt, she's vulnerable, but she's not weak. And her being paired as this big sister, eldest daughter. Everyone plays their part so well, but it is centered around her performance, and she just knocks it out of the ballpark. Sawyer is great. The little girl who plays Sawyer is awesome. She's not a scared little girl. For instance, when she encounters the boogeyman in the dark hallway, she thinks it's Sadie, and the next time she sees her, she starts kicking her. She isn't a damsel in distress. In the end, she wraps Christmas lights around her to venture into the darkness to help her sister fight the boogeyman. So she isn't the one that's always going to be victimized. She's going to be right there with her older sister to fight the bad guy. I love it. As I already said about Chris Messina, Will is haunted. He's withholding. You scream at him as you watch the television because you just want him to open up, but you get it. And you can tell that, man, he loves his kids, and he's going through it too. And it's very redemptive that he's able to open up, and that they're able to heal together as a family. The use of doorways is great in this film. If the boogeyman is milk, then the door is the cookie. They just go together. And in order to build up the dread without showing the boogeyman at all times, Rob Savage is able to pull from the shared imagery of the boogeyman through the ubiquity of doors throughout this movie, and just keeps that palpable sense of anticipation and dread present in nearly every scene that we are in. Doors are just ominous throughout the movie. There's shadows under the door frames, silhouettes through door windows, close-up shots of door handles opening, a crack of a door frame, blood underneath the door frame. So just that was a smart choice, so that we don't have to spend too much time with the digital effect of the boogeyman itself, which is on full reveal by the end of the movie. But again, it's not something that is shoved down our throats throughout the entirety of the movie. Special effects are not prioritized in place of horror. The boogeyman does come out at the end, but by that point, the movie had staked its claim as a worthy horror story that is, for all the reasons that I've already discussed, a movie more focused on exploring this family in the wake of a tragedy by setting effective mood, establishing a tone, and having it just be a movie in which the actors can play convincing performances of this family going through it as they explore this together. So it was never about the boogeyman, it's about this family. And so, yes, at the end we get some special effects as they fight a digital creature, but it was not nearly enough to take me out, because they had done all of the work necessary in order for me to fall in love with this movie. So I strongly recommend the Boogeyman. I'm kicking myself for not seeing it when it came out and celebrating it when it was still in theaters. So we have a couple Stephen King Easter eggs. Number 19. Number 19, our favorite number within the Stephen King multiverse. It is the number of the house. And then we got Dave Dastmalchian himself, who was most recently in Life of Chuck. All right, everyone. So that's all that I have for this week. I was really, really happy to sit down and record my thoughts on the Boogeyman. Like I said, this was a wonderful time. If you have not checked it out and listened to this review, even though you have had it spoiled for you, don't hesitate. Just go out and watch it. You're not going to be disappointed. it's a very strong adaptation and just a very solid horror movie. You'll enjoy it. Okay, everyone, if you have any thoughts, write into StephenKingcast@yahoo.com. You can follow me on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and on Blue Sky. Head on over to StephenKingcast.com for all the latest updates on this podcast and Stephen King news. You can get collections of podcasts. In the collections section, you can get all the musical stylings of Stephen King. In the playlist section, it has a link to the Patreon page, so swing on over to the Patreon page, and if you want early access to Stephen King Cast episodes, you can subscribe on the Constant Readers tier, or if you want everything related to anything but Stephen King for all of the pop cultural zeitgeisty stuff, you can subscribe to the Deadlights tier, which that name will be changing at some point. But thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for all of the support, and may you have long days and pleasant nights, and I'll see you here next time where MOON spells Stephen King Cast.